7:50-ish.
In the morning. Jay,
Yes.
welcome back.
Thank you very much, Diego.
Thank you. Today, we have a very interesting topic. Before we jump in, of course, something that pissed me off. Were African borders.
Mm-hmm.
I hate them with a burning passion.
Why?
Because, one, they're straight lines, which I despise.
It is Pride Month.
It is Pride Month, yes. I think it's June...
Juneteenth.
Juneteenth today.
Shout out to Juneteenth.
Yeah. But they were drawn by the British and the French and pretty much every colonial power in Africa. And why they make me so angry is not only because they're straight lines, but also because they do not reflect the cultural boundaries of Africa at all whatsoever.
Why can't Africans just respect borders?
Because those borders have been in place for like the past 50 years, I think, and it's really hard to. No one really wants to give up their land.
Yeah, 100%. I would imagine it would be hard living in the town that we're in if some foreign power came in and just arbitrarily drew a border and said you can't cross that. But my dad lives over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Mexico. Like if Mexico claimed all of its former imperial land.
Right.
Yeah.
Something that pisses me off a lot that just happened is Turkey is trying to join BRICS. I don't know if you heard about this.
No, I did not.
So for the listeners that don't know, the BRICS nations is sort of China and Russia's answer to the US dollar being the primary currency in global trade. They want to develop a currency used and shared between Russia, China, India, South Africa, and Brazil are the 5 primary BRICS nations, sort of modeling after the European Union. Primary problem for them is that every single one of those countries balances the value of its currency off of massive reserves of US dollars. So they would make this sort of ghost currency on top of the valuation of the dollar. It's basically a national pride project that would, who knows what it would do, but it would allow for greater trade between those countries. Turkey's always been sort of an economic runt in the European sphere and has been straddled between Europe and Asia and has been trying to find its place. It's wrapped up with NATO now, has strong military ties, but still acts militarily in direct contradiction to the goals of the Western NATO countries, like in the Middle East, for example, with their campaigns against the Kurdish people. And their crackdown on freedom of speech and the right to assembly and all this stuff. So Turkey's a walking contradiction. I don't necessarily blame them that they would flirt with the idea of going to BRICS nations for the economy, but it really just pisses me off that we have such an important ally that feels like it needs to, or feels like it wants to, continue to trade with Russia and continue to trade with China and go around trade embargoes and form deeper economic ties with them.
Yeah.
I feel like a more unified NATO would be a stronger NATO.
Yeah. Definitely.
So that's been pissing me off. African nations have been not African nations. Not African nations.
No. African nations borders.
African nations borders, which is a result of European nations.
Yeah.
Set the record straight. Now it's time for our sponsor. Our sponsor today is...
this ad space is open. So if you want here.
Yeah, could you pay us?
Hey man, please. You want money?
We'll advertise your products. We've already sold out to the CCP yesterday.
We're soulless now. We can be as soulless and corporate as you want.
Yeah, let's see. Maybe we could get a rival to Donghua on, like Gongzhou Chemicals Group.
Yeah, or we could sell out to Big Pharma.
Sell that to Big Pharma would be good.
There's a scene in South Park where there's this auction for influencers, and all the groups, they have the NRA, the CCP, Big Pharma, I think it was like tobacco, something else, Kellogg, all the big companies, you know. We're here, we're free-ish, not really.
Yeah. I love, I just wish that authoritarianism in the United States would be more open and honest.
Yeah.
And we could just find that American fascism between corporatocracy and government.
Yeah, because I think like just the government as a corporation, like a mega corporation, I think that would be like a pretty solid form of government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bureaucratic efficiency.
Yeah, incredible bureaucratic efficiency. I think it should be modeled off the American healthcare system for maximum efficiency.
Yeah, that would be good. You could have like employment insurance kind of.
Yeah.
And whatever premium you pay sort of gets you better coverage.
Great stuff.
Yeah, love it.
So for our today's topic, thrilling stuff, we will be going over the criminal trials of two fantastic human specimens.
Lovely people.
Donald Jason Trump.
And Hunter Biden.
I don't think the J actually stands for anything. I kind of made that up.
Well, Donald J. Trump, Jason. Yeah, might as well be. Yeah, or like maybe like a Jebediah.
Oh, I think it actually is Jebediah.
Yeah, Trump, it seems like he has a little bit of Amish in him.
Yeah.
If you look at that hair and the way it whisks.
The way it whisks, yeah.
It's probably why he's feeling so, confused right now. He's lost from his roots. All
this modern technology has corrupted him, yeah.
Yeah, give this guy, put a hoe in his hand, get him tilling the land.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, 2 days ago, Hunter Biden was convicted on gun charges. I think about a month ago. I think it's been a few weeks, or it was a few weeks ago.
What kind of gun was it?
It was a big iron revolver.
Okay, respectable
firearm, yeah. He purchased it from a Delaware gun store. What prosecutors say is when he was filling out the form, there is a part listed where you say you are not addicted to any drugs. Prosecutors claimed that he was, in particular crack cocaine, which is, a favorite among all the kids today. So, according to prosecutors, he was using crack at this time when he signed that form, which would be illegal, and he had illegal possession of a firearm.
So that's essentially fraud.
Essentially, yeah.
He committed fraud on a federal form.
Yeah.
Right? And this is one of those forms that a lot of people on the left, they say, oh, well, it takes almost nothing to get a gun, but there is some sort of like a background clearance, and so we're seeing the results of that. Of course, he was able to get it. Let's talk about how we got up to this point. We have two convictions now from two presidential families. What the heck?
Yeah, so originally, this whole case started in, I believe, 2018, when around the same time he actually purchased the gun, funnily enough.
2018, so 2 years into Trump's presidency.
2 years into Trump's presidency.
The Bidens are just so devastated by the Clinton loss that one of their members spirals into a furious drug addiction.
Yes, and the Trump administration, a lot of Republicans, especially in the kind of MAGA camp, are trying to dig up some dirt on Biden to maybe better the odds for Trump in the upcoming 2020 election. And a way they do this is they look into Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden been a lot of previous scandals, his Ukraine business deals. And the head prosecutor was able to dig through a lot of stuff and was able to build this pretty strong case, bringing it to Delaware court not too long ago. And the prosecution, essentially, they got a lot of stuff. I mean, they were it was a presidential prosecution. It was federal. They were able to get phone records, bank records, ATM withdrawals, all this stuff. On top of that, with this overwhelming amount of evidence, the negotiations for a plea deal that would allow Hunter to avoid jail time fell apart, and Hunter's legal team challenged them to go to court. The prosecutor took them up on this and actually brought them to court. I think that's something they didn't really expect. And I mean, looking at this case, I don't really see any way they could have won this, the defense. I mean, there's just an overwhelming amount of such damning evidence against Hunter.
True. Yeah. And then this coincides around the time during one of Trump's first impeachments. He was not just against Hunter Biden, but really the entire Biden family. Listeners might recall Trump's first impeachment came with a call to President Zelensky far before the Russian invasion. And remember, Russia had invaded, Donetsk and what was the other one?
I mean, it was a semi-invasion. So Russia in 2014, after Euromaidan, seized Crimea.
Crimea, yes.
Originally they were supposed to take all of Ukraine's coastline, but that didn't go too well.
Luhansk, was it Luhansk and Donetsk?
Luhansk and Donetsk were
That's right.
Yeah,
Yes.
Russia funded separatists and terrorist organizations in these regions.
Yeah.
And there was an active conflict in the Donbass between
The Donbass.
2014 and the Russian invasion.
Yeah, and so there's all this United States aid coming in. There's advisors working with Zelensky, who's a new president. He's a fresh president. He was a former comedian.
Yeah, an actor.
Suddenly elected president, and Trump tries to call and overwhelm him and says basically, hey, we're going to pull the strings on U.S. aid unless you can find some sort of wheeling and dealing that the Biden family did in Ukraine. Because Hunter Biden allegedly was doing backroom deals with Ukrainian natural gas companies specifically. And Ukraine doesn't have the best reputation in terms of corruption.
Yeah.
It was low and getting better, but as a former Soviet satellite state, I mean, one of the primary reasons for the USSR collapsing was corruption. So Trump was trying to actively dig up stuff at this time, for sure. So we're seeing results of that now, is what you're saying, this conviction. Yeah. So is this a Trump win?
I would say it's a Trump win, and it's definitely a win for the Republican Party. But I think it's too little, too late. As we're going to touch on later, Trump's criminal conviction, where he was found guilty on 34 counts of falsifying business records, was probably a much more significant blow than to the Republicans than Hunter Biden's conviction was for the Democrats. Although, a funny little detail is the day the jury deliberated on the Biden case, Trump was actually going to an appointment with his new parole officer around the same time. I thought it was kind of funny.
That is funny. I can just imagine Trump out on a nice little picnic with his parole officers. He's shoving $100 bills in the officers' pockets, saying, "Where do you want to go out for steak?" Yeah. No shade to the parole officer. I'm sure they were professional and rejected every bribe that Trump tries to throw at any state official out there. What does the Biden conviction accomplish for Trump? Does it really give any ammo to the Trump campaign in the future? because what I worry about for the Trump campaign, not that I'm particularly worried for it, is that this might actually blow back on some of their narratives of being persecuted by the justice system. The justice system is rigged and controlled. Biden's pulling the strings and the deep state is pulling the strings. We saw, of course, Trump use the DOJ in that way to investigate specifically the Biden family. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that for a lot, it really depends on which side of the spectrum you look at. When looking at, I think it's no stranger to a lot of people on the left and towards the middle that Trump did use the justice system for his own personal gain. However, I think for a lot of Republicans, it wouldn't come off as Trump being a hypocrite. I think it would come off more as this small fringe of the justice system that is actually free and fair and is going after the supposed real criminals in the government. But I think it definitely hurts that narrative that the DOJ is this kind of shadowy deep state organization run by Obama, the puppet master, Trump, Obama, and Biden, that's pulling all the strings, and Benghazi. I mean, for years, Trump went after Biden, Hunter Biden, really aggressively.
The laptop.
The laptop is my personal favorite.
The infamous laptop. Will the contents ever be released to us?
Will the contents ever be released? I believe there were parts of it were released on the House floor, which contained some interesting videos.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Spicy videos.
I think I have.
Yeah.
I think I recall this. Yes.
Yeah. For anyone who's unaware, the Hunter Biden laptop incident was Hunter Biden brought, correct me if I'm wrong, his laptop in to be repaired, and the repairman found some very interesting things on there, and potentially criminal things, and so I believe he turned it into the police, and then it trickled its way down to the justice system, the DOJ, and a lot of Republicans especially the GOP, have been trying to use it to their own advantage.
Yeah, smoking crack typically is a crime, I think, in the U.S.
Typically, yeah. Unless distributing it isn't really, I don't think. Especially in the inner city.
This is tangential, but tell me if you ever heard of this guy. There was a mayor of Toronto years ago that was an open crackhead. Toronto decriminalized its drugs completely, and a guy ran for mayorship openly smoking crack, and he won it. And he served as mayor, I think, for a couple of years.
Wow.
Can you imagine that happening in a city? Do you think Hunter Biden would be a politician if we had less stringent drug laws than the U.S.? He does have the family dynasty.
I mean, yeah, he definitely does have the connections, but I honestly don't think so.
I don't think American society is as tolerant of drug use as the moose up in Canada.
I thought you were talking about Trudeau for a second. That checks out.
Yeah.
That checks out. That's something he would do.
Yeah, smoke some crack in the box, right?
Smoke some crack, put on some blackface,
It all makes sense. It's coming together.
It's all coming
together. Trudeau, get out of Canada. Go back to your street ways, man.
Yeah, go back to Quebec. Where you belong.
Yeah. So that was Trump's first impeachment, was bringing that stuff up. The second impeachment,
I don't recall what the second impeachment was about.
it was kind of overshadowed. The first one was a huge deal, and I remember everyone during the time of the second one, they were like, "Oh, this again! Like, I'm tired of watching this. Change the channel," that sort of thing. But the second impeachment was the January 6th.
Yes.
Yeah. So, this article from Cornell Law School says the second Trump impeachment occurred a year later in the waning days of the Trump presidency following the events of January 6, 2021 at the U.S. Capitol, in which some supporters of Trump attempted to disrupt the congressional certification of the 2020 election. The House moved quickly following those events, passing an investigation. The Judiciary Committee staff compiled publicly available evidence, and within 1 week had introduced and approved a single article of impeachment charging the president with, quote, incitement to insurrection, end quote. So it sounds like the House was able to get an impeachment together before Trump could officially turn over office to the Biden administration, leaving him the most impeached president in U.S. history and owner of 2 out of 4 total impeachments for any presidents.
Yeah.
Which, that's a big hitter right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy's got some notches in his belt.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
I think, especially, I think January 6th definitely overshadowed that. I mean, the amount of evidence that he caused the insurrection is quite damning and a lot. I even said on national television, we are going to fight, take the Capitol if you must. One surprising details from that event were the lack of law enforcement around. I think for an attack on a major branch of the U.S. government, I would expect at least a lot of police and at most maybe the National Guard, which we did not show up. It was only a few police officers, House police officers that were there.
Yeah, it was the Capitol Hill normal police detachment. There was nothing additional really provided to account for the demonstration. And while the Pentagon and Department of Homeland were briefed on it, they were sort of left out of the loop, and the decision-making process was not part of the investigation was whether or not Trump stalled any decision-making process with officials within the Pentagon or obstructed their ability to deploy any forces there. So I remember interviews at the time that it happened. The police chief from Capitol Hill said that they had reached out to the Pentagon and got delayed responses and just felt completely understaffed and unsupported. So a big part of the investigation was that intentional? Also a big part of the investigation was Trump in direct communication or indirect communication with the highly organized groups like the Proud Boys and other affiliates that maybe weren't directly Proud Boy members, but the guys that came with the zip ties and were sharing the maps of the tunnels underneath the Capitol building and all this stuff. They came with an intention to basically restrain Senate members and find Mike Pence and prevent him from. Now, someone will need to fact check me, but I believe that it was Mike Pence that actually gave the official order to whatever Pentagon Homeland Security official it was to eventually deploy the National Guard. But I'm not 100% sure on that. I do know that he conscientiously disobeyed Trump's order to not go ahead. And now he doesn't endorse Trump. He doesn't endorse Trump. And when you see him in interviews talking, people say, why don't you endorse Trump? And he says he doesn't run on the conservative platform that I run on. And he's even now still so meek and mild and sort of center of the road on it. But I think that really was a conscious decision by Mike Pence to adhere to the Constitution. And for that, I give the guy respect. Me
as well. I mean, I think it takes a huge amount of nerve to do that especially when you've been serving with Trump for 4 years. I think that it was an incredible show of strong character by Pence to adhere to the Constitution and not let his political beliefs get in the way of his duty to serve the people of this kind of great nation.
Yes. So let's get to the current Trump trials.
Yes.
Trump just faced a conviction.
34 counts.
34 counts.
Yeah.
Could he have done more? Could he have done better? Is that a high score?
That is every single count he was charged on.
So, yeah, but is that respectable? Like, could he have gone for gold?
He did go for gold.
Okay, so 34 is like, that's
those were all of the counts he was charged. The prosecution brought forward were 34.
Okay, but that's in one criminal trial, right?
One criminal trial, he was found guilty on all charges.
And he's facing 6 trials total?
Yes.
Is it 4 civil and 2 criminal?
2 criminal, yes.
What's the other criminal one?
I believe the other criminal one, there's so many
It was the insurrection one, right?
It was the insurrection one. I was also thinking the gerrymandering in Alabama, but I think that may have been resolved.
Okay. I'm unfamiliar with that one. What was that one?
During the election, it's kind of interesting because Alabama isn't really, or maybe it was Georgia, Alabama isn't really a swing state, and it definitely wasn't in the election.
He was looking for votes in Georgia.
It was in Georgia.
That would be the Georgia voter fraud.
Georgia voter fraud, yeah. It was that. He called the Georgia governor and asked for him to find 11,000 votes so he could win the state.
The irony is not lost on me how he accuses other people of things that he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When there's phone calls of him saying those things.
Right.
He's something else.
Yeah.
Maybe he's this new level of intelligence that we can comprehend.
Yeah, an impressive individual. Maybe one day he'll be up there.
Maybe one day he'll be up on the wall.
Yeah, one day. He still needs to earn a little bit. He needs to earn it, though.
He needs to earn it, though.
Yeah, he's not quite there.
He's not quite there. If he tries another January 6th, then he gets to go up the wall.
Maybe if he successfully implements 2025.
If he successfully implements 2025, he earns a spot on the wall.
Yeah, well, okay, 100%. Cool. I think that's the time that we have for our segment. It's fine. It's time for DPRK takes for our glorious leader to take us out. And I have one for today. I think this is glorious. And it's in El Salvador.
Oh.
El Salvador recently came down draconianly, extremely harshly on anyone that might look or smell like or look at you like a criminal.
Yeah.
So think anyone that's tattooed, anyone that acts any sort of way like they're in gang culture. And that was enacted by Nayib Bukele. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but he's a pretty good-looking young man, looks fresh to politics, and he basically came into El Salvador and said, fine, you're gonna fight us every chance you get, just blend in with people, we're gonna stereotype the hell out of everyone and arrest anyone that looks anything like a criminal and do mass arrests without trial and stuff you in prison. And you know what happened to the crime rate? One of the worst murder rates and the worst violent crime rates in the world?
Went down, I think,
to almost nothing.
Yeah.
To almost nothing.
Yeah, but however, not only is that a huge violation of human rights, also, I believe they're also suspending freedom of assembly as well.
Yeah.
A violation of that. I'm pretty sure that's a violation of human rights.
100%.
And also, it's without trial. There's very little evidence to go off. So we're getting.
They got the tax.
We're getting the exact same situation as in the Salem witch trials, where neighbors that don't like each other are accusing each other of being witches, in this case gang members, to get them out.
Hey, all I'm saying is what happened to that crime rate. And what about the human rights of the people that were being violated day in and day out by these violent people.
But that's like saying that you're gonna solve the unemployment rate on Alderaan by blowing it up. Because there's technically nobody
The country
employed.
is still there.
Yeah, but there's
Non-tattooed people can live normal lives now.
if everyone's
This is
in
a
prison,
war on tattoos, really.
what did the tattoos do to you?
Murdered my family if I was Salvadorian and forced like thousands of refugees to come to the United States.
Yeah, but what about, there's so many like issues with that. That's like Nazi Germany just rounding up everyone and putting them in prison camps.
So what do you do then? What's the alternative without this hardliners massive abuse of human rights to solve this massive problem? They've tried the policing, they've tried, surveillance in the communities. Salvadorian jails are some of the worst in the world. I mean, they are stuffed full. This guy, Nayib Bukele or Nayib Bukele, if I'm going to do a really anglicized pronunciation, felt like his country had tried everything already for decades, short of the death squads that the Salvadorians were waging against leftists in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Right? So what is the answer then? If not this massive, just Soylent Green style, scooping up people with the dump truck and throwing them into prisons?
I'll give you this. I don't think there was any other way to do this. But doesn't mean it's ethical. I mean, there could have been. I mean, maybe hell, you could just kind of put them on a desert island or something, and maybe see what comes out of it.
Napoleon escaped his first exile. That's all I'll say.
Didn't escape the second though.
No, he didn't escape the second. That's true.
I mean, also with the, I think the Salvadorian prisons aren't gonna fix the problem. They're gonna make it worse, actually, I think. Because there's gonna be a lot of innocent people that are gonna be thrown in prison and then radicalized by these gang members. So it's just, once these people get out, there's gonna be even more gangs, so the problem's just gonna recycle itself.
Well, that may be true. Time will tell.
Time will tell.
And with that, that's the time for episode number 2.
So number 2.
Anti Democratic Authoritarian Fan Club.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.
And thanks to our sponsors.
Lack of sponsors.
Yes, lack of sponsors. Who doesn't want to support this?
Yeah, I know.
This
This is a great idea.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how much money a wildly popular internet show is making?
No.
Bajillions.
Bajillions.
What goes after bajillionaire?
Quintillion Mayor?
What?
Yeah.
Quintillionaire? What goes after quintillionaire?
Bobillion Bear?
Bob, that's a bear. It's like a species of like
Yeah.
Bob-billionaire. It just, you give up on the air part.
I think you get rich enough, you cease to be human. You transform into something greater.
From President Obama to Paul Pot.